quorum. Okay, it's 5:32-ish on Thursday, February 24th, and we're going to call this work group meeting to order. Would everybody like to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Would you call the roll for us, please, sir?
Commissioner Bryson.
Here.
Commissioner Ross.
Here.
Commissioner Kreidler.
Here.
Planning Commissioner Heath.
Here.
Community and Economics Development Representative Moran.
Here.
City Manager Tatman.
Here.
Okay, good. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda, please?
So moved.
Support?
Any additions, changes? All in favor?
Aye.
Public comment. We're going to continue with the open discussion for as much as we can tonight. As before, the same kind of rules apply. Let's not have any manifestos and try to keep your comments to what's new and exciting as opposed to what's been repeated over and over again. So that said, Laura, why don't we start with you and Paul, since I know you have something to begin with here.
So I just, it's a little
Holly,
addition.
do the
Thank you.
people in the audience have a copy of the information?
It has been posted online, it's
Okay.
on the website, and then anybody that's asked for a copy of it, we've either
We've got
directed
it.
them there or
Okay.
we can
'Cause
provide copies.
there's an extra copy here if somebody wants it.
May I? Yeah, I sold that.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's yours. Okay.
But yes, actually, if, we'll just say, it's under, if you go to the City Commission webpage, there is a link on the left-hand side that says Work Group Meeting for 300 and 303, and all of these documents are uploaded onto there for anyone that's interested.
Okay. So what I'm about, like, my presentation doesn't really go exactly with what I just handed out to you, but a lot of it is there. So, anyway, so I'm Laura Merchant, President of the Chamber of Commerce and Treasurer and Co-founder of River Rec Teen Zone. Paul Merchant and I recently met with Jeff Bohm, Chair of the St. Clair County Board of Commission, to discuss his thoughts about 300 Broadway. Jeff took us on a tour of Eddy Elementary School in St. Clair, where they have repurposed a closed school to meet the needs of the community. It has become an adaptive reuse facility, complete with a workout center, commercial kitchen, incubator space, office space, shared meeting space, and more. The YMCA has also partnered with them in order to open a daycare center, which will be opening sometime this year. This is not a new concept. Back in March of 2017, about 20 people representing many groups and organizations in Marine City began meeting to create the Marine City Enrichment Center. We actually had similar ideas back then, but one of the major lacking components was that it was not spearheaded by the city, although a few city officials were part of this group. We knew at this time that it would take a village, not just one group, to accomplish making 300 Broadway a placemaker in our community and our county. As a stakeholder in Marine City, I am here today to present a project idea for 300 Broadway that could make this building a viable place for all to enjoy. As an essential asset to the city, this project proposes that the city of Marine City would keep its asset, which means retaining ownership of 300 Broadway. The city could create a subcommittee under the direction of the Community and Economic Development Board in order to create a similar but better concept to meet the needs of our community. This could be facilitated by the city as a collaborative effort with common goals, working together, the outcome which is saving the building and repurposing it into a usable space. Having a city board that is focused on the community and economic development of Marine City makes this the perfect time to assign such a project to this group. This subcommittee could include partners who would represent stakeholders in this property and our city. These individuals would represent, for example, the Historic Society, City Commission, Friends of City Hall, Community and Economic Development Board, the Chamber, River Rec Teen Zone, residents, county representatives, and others as appointed by the board. Again, this would be a collaborative effort amongst partners supported by the city. The purpose of this subcommittee would be to develop a plan and timeline for the repurposing of 300 Broadway through the Guy Center project, and I'll get to that. Thus creating placemaking within our community. Placemaking is also defined heavily, in your package, which is a huge buzzword for our county. The focus would be on how this public space would be used rather than just how it would look. This subcommittee could collaborate with the county to establish funding opportunities and needs within the county and city. They could develop a business plan for the project, create a Blue Meets Green presentation and initiative, search for funding opportunities, apply for grants, seek other stakeholders in the community, create a priority list, phases of development, and create a plan and timeline for accomplishing tasks. Some of this has already been done through Friends of City Hall, River Rec Teen Zone, and the Enrichment Center project, which makes this daunting task easier when we work in partnership as a group. The group could follow the same process and format as was followed in other work groups. This has been successful with a number of funding projects. Some examples are our music parklet, which was about $32,000. Our beach fundraiser, $11,000. River Rec Teen Zone, we raised $34,000. The marina project was over $300,000. Our kayak launch, $28,000, and many more. There's an Excel spreadsheet in your packet that outlines other awarded grants as well. The city has been awarded over $500,000 in grants from June of 2018 to present. This is without having a designated grant writer. Imagine if the city had someone even part-time doing this. River Rec Teen Zone currently occupies 2,600 square feet of 300 Broadway. That is that loose handout that I gave you. 1,400 square feet is being used and accommodates 49 people, according to the fire marshal. It is complete with ADA entrance, a ramp, restrooms, shower, HVAC, refrigerator, washer dryer, sink, microwave, large screen TV, Wi-Fi, furnishings, and air hockey. We have invested over $120,000 in this space. Some was through donations, individual donations, and some was through matching grants. This portion of 300 Broadway could serve as a place for people to gather and play cards during daytime hours. Since Terhune has closed in Marine City, we have hosted a group of about 15 gentlemen the first Wednesday of each month at the Mariner with coffee, donuts, and a lot of gab. 300 Broadway could be a great place to move this group to. The unfinished adjacent 1,200 square feet of River Rec Teen Zone can easily be transformed into an area that offers technology and a space for workspaces, offices, and more. These two areas are ADA compliant and accessible. The Chamber of Commerce could easily move into this space to pay rent to begin creating a revenue stream. In addition, the Chamber would expand their offerings and create a business center complete with supplies and items needed for business development, such as printers, supplies, a fax, scanning, a 3-hole punch, and more. And I say 3-hole punch because someone just called and needed a 3-hole punch for a presentation they were putting together. So additional ideas for the Guy Center project offerings could include but not be limited to an additional warming center, as I think they are already talking about creating this into a warming center. Community gathering space, workplace for remote workers, technology center, meeting spaces, incubator for business development, event center, commercial kitchen, through the Community Foundation, which there's something called Thumb Coast Kitchens. There is one in Port Huron, and they actually bought the atrium for a second Thumb Coast Kitchen. And it's a place where startups can go, or let's say, for instance, you make bread and you want to take them to a farmer's market. These are commercial kitchens that are available for rent. So Marine City doesn't have one, so that could be something that we could get funding for. This space would help support Heritage Park events like the ice skating rink, chamber events, art fairs, community events, and more. Funding sources, there are many. So you have matching grant opportunities, you have patronicity crowdfunding, state grants, DTE Foundation, St. Clair County Foundation, countywide grant opportunities, community donations, corporate donations, federal grants. There's actually one called the RISE that is available that could work for this piece of property. Matching grant monies could be captured from our partners, such as the Historic Society or Friends of City Hall, or River Rec Teen Zone, or other vested groups and Community and Economic Development Board, to name a few. Funds could also be used from the potential sale of 303 Water Street. The Guy Center funds could be held for 300 Broadway to actually become the real Guy Center. More detailed information pertaining to each item that I discussed is included in the packet that you have. This building is a landmark and located in the heart of Marine City. We believe that breathing new life into this building for the community will help create unity amongst all. This is a win-win for all involved, a community working together to bring a community center to its residents with their city driving the way.
Any questions or comments from the floor?
How would that work? Or would a partnership with Friends of City Hall be feasible?
I don't see any reason why not.
I think in conversations I've had with the attorney about different scenarios presented, what I think part of what we were worried about was the legality with some of the partnerships and operating on private, public land, things like that. The conversations I had with him led to more of a, Friends of City Hall is a nonprofit that has a mission to help restore and preserve that building in this community. They could still have the mission to continue to fundraise on their own and make the contribution to the city with that funds being designated and earmarked for the fund to go back into the facility. I would look at it more as like a
That's kinda what I meant.
relationship like that, not a partnership contract,
Right.
partial ownership. They just, if they wanted to continue to do things to help the property, it would be more of a partnership in that way.
It seems to me Laura was suggesting a group effort, community group effort with Friends of City Hall as an integral.
So
partnership
isn't used.
Oh, there it is.
You know, we're all co-owning it.
That's not what I meant, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So partnership in the scheme of like the county and funding, it just has to do with collaboration and groups working together.
Okay, yeah, I didn't see the very first part.
I just read an article in the paper this morning, and I cannot remember the name of the group. It's the land bank that's operating, doing things in St. Clair, much like we did with the Marina project. They're doing fundraising and they're holding funds and things like that. This sounds like it's eligible
Yeah,
for involvement of them as well.
that would be awesome.
You know, I've worked with Laura on several of the projects that she's mentioned, and I was delighted at the ability to bring in funding from like the county and community chest and things like that. Can we get like Dave Bohm, or Jeff Bohm and Dave Van Bosch and whoever else
Yes.
is doing it, can they come next week and do a?
Yeah, if
or
you'd like
next-
me to, I've asked if they would want to be involved, and they said that they would. so.
Okay, because a lot of this, it seems to me there are two advantages to this. One, keeping it in the hands of the city alleviates a lot of the problems we had. Is it a park, isn't it a park? How do we run a community center there if it's owned by somebody else? Is there money that we could transfer from 303 Water Street? How do we do that to an entity that's you know, not part of the city?
Right.
It deals with a lot of those issues, and by no means excludes Friends of City Hall from doing their thing.
No, I think it's very important, and I think we learned this with the Marina project, is that we had to work together on a lot of projects. And the Marina project, you know, you had the chamber involved, you had the city, you had the community, you know, it took a lot of people to get it to the next stage.
Right.
So, but having an asset, I think, you know, personally, you know, I think it's important for the city to keep their asset, you know, and that's a big one.
Yeah, well, it certainly warrants more investigations, so. Judy, have you a comment?
Yeah, what I'm not hearing so far, and I apologize for being late, it was a work schedule and transportation
No problem.
issue. What I'm not hearing so far is in reference to the business plan of Friends of City Hall. We wanted to look long range, to do something with the building that would be sustainable and that would create income that could be directed both to the, maintaining a profit-making business, and also a foundation to fund upkeep of the building, because upkeep has been a critical and ongoing issue forever with that building.
Right.
And truly is not solved, even as we speak, very much not solved. So I made the offer to buy the building so we'd be eligible to raise grant money. And I understand what you're saying about the city holding on to it, but then the problem becomes, what happens to us? What happens to our investment to date? What happens to our business plan and the intent of that business plan? And that worries me. I see us being like pushed aside and, kind of forgotten and put up on the shelf. Thank you very much, goodbye.
Yeah, Laura, you want to respond to that?
I actually think that, I don't agree, because I think we'd all work together, and you'd have a representative. The idea would be the subcommittee would have a representative from all these groups, Historic Commission, anybody, any of the stakeholders. But I also see having Friends of City Hall have an office there, that they are the history behind it. But it is our common goal, all of our common goal is to save the building, right? So your mission statement for Friends of City Hall, that is your mission statement. So it is, we're all working together. But ultimately, the building doesn't belong to River Rec, doesn't belong to Friends of City Hall. It belongs to the city. But
And-
I could see all of us working together with our ideas, pulling in your business plan, pulling in what's going on now and what's needed now in the county, because it's the county and the region that's saying, we need incubator space. We just had somebody reach out wanting a place to get out of their house to be able to sit with their computer and work outside of their home because they're stuck in their house. This could give that opportunity. And then with expansion, you've got Magna here. You have the Kiewit people here. You have other companies that are coming into this county it could use this as an incubator space or an office space. We could have a conference center. This is all rentable. This is not free. This is rentable.
Okay, so Phil?
Can I come up more?
Yeah. And I think we should probably be doing that too.
Oh,
so.
yeah, because
Sorry.
those comments are.
Philip Alekshak.
Right.
I've been thinking a lot about Friends of City Hall. I've been thinking a lot about Water Street, 303, the Guy Center. And something crossed my mind, what if we could work together to attack two fronts as one group? You got the Friends of City Hall, which have made a tremendous investment in 300 Broadway, which we thank you for. You've done a great job. And I like their business proposal to take it over, opens up for more money to come in, more federal grants, things like that. And actually has, hey, we have a shot of getting that building up to a good, decent, usable, where the community could use it, as I'm trying to say. So I know the River Rec Teen Zone is in there, and what I was gonna propose is, why not have a part of that agreement where the River Rec Teen Zone can stay in during the renovation period, and they work around the Friends of City Hall, so they gotta move rooms or whatever, as rooms get worked on, things like that. But in the background, if we had another group, like the Friends of City Hall, or another group that starts up like Friends of the Guy Center or something Guy Center, and they go out and they raise funding, or whatever they can do, grants, under the guise of community center, and they work on 303 Water Street. So effectively what you've got now is you have the Friends of City Hall can continue their work, and I believe it was 10 years, correct, Judy? They have 10 years to continue their work. River Rec Teen Zone would be protected and the place for the teens to go. The Guy Center can get worked on at the same time, and then eventually, at some point, 10 years, everything gets revisited and seeing, okay, does the 300 Broadway go back to the city? If the Guy Center is fully completed, that can become another community center that we can use, for teens, for youth, for the community all together. So to set something up where you can actually attack both buildings at once, each group working together, but part of the group works on 300 Broadway, part of the group works on 303 Water Street. And the goal would be by the end of that, you would have hopefully two beautiful buildings. One that's the historical building, the old City Hall, and the other one if someone wanted to do something down by the water. And the reason I like the idea of being able to use that as a teen center and a youth center and a community center, I'm referring to 303 Guy Center, the Guy Center right now, 303 South Water Street, is because you have two beautiful parks on each side of it, one of which has volleyball nets and everything. So you can have outdoor recreation as well. And you have that easement in the back, so a deck could be built if they wanted to, things like that. But ultimately, just reiterate, a group that kills two birds with one stone and works together, and then we wind up as a city eventually having two beautiful buildings returned to the city. It alleviates, I think, the legalities with the park, because the Friends of City Hall wants to keep that a park, the heritage, correct? And then I think it alleviates the legalities with, a private enterprise operating on city property, because the River Rec Teen Zone then becomes just a tenant of the Friends of City Hall, and that can stay the way it stays while the buildings get worked on. And it gives everybody time to work on them.
What was the cost of renovating 303 Water Street?
It's the early quotes from Mike were in excess of 300 K, just to
300,000.
even get some ADA compliance issues taken care of. But I'd like to speak to kind of both what Judy and Laura have been talking about with the incubator space idea and the thought process and how financially it would work from a legality standpoint with the city. If the city maintains the property, because it is already ours, the Friends of City Hall have been an amazing asset to the city for all of these years. Their fundraising efforts, their advertisement efforts for it, that wouldn't go unnoticed. And they would still be a partner in helping raise funds and be, come here and advertise this amazing building that we helped save. It would never be a thought of putting somebody on a shelf. I agree that this is a group effort to work. But I think the idea, and I've put a lot of thought into this concept, and I've talked with quite a few people, both at the MEDC level and the attorneys, on how this would work. And really, staying city-owned the connections and the assets that we have to leverage to go after the extra grant money from MEDC, from the county, from the private foundations that we haven't even touched. We have a lot of money to be able to leverage those in matching money to go after larger, bigger things now. And getting your county commissioners on board now to help to see Marine City is moving forward. Look at what we just did with the marina. Look at the potential that we have. I think that as a city-owned property, we probably, and with all due respect, not saying that you guys don't have, guns behind you to go after this stuff, I think that we would have more leverage to pull in more money now. You would see things happen quicker. And in return, the thought of the incubator spaces and the rental spaces, as we're putting money in to create a better space, it just branches out. The teen center area is already available. It's already ADA compliant. That section can already be rented out now to start this process. Every penny that's brought in from the revenue of that building goes back into the bank account to continue to repair it and maintain it for years to come. This would not become a little cash cow for the city to dip into, a little extra revenue stream. It would feed itself. So it's constantly, the more you work at renting it out and utilizing it, the more money you have to put back into it on top of the grant funding you have. I think that business plan, which is what your business plan was when Friends of City Hall basically had it, is a good plan. We just shift that over to the cities operating that. And then because the revenue stream, and this is something that we have to be conscious of, with the way that we rent it out and the types of rental space we use and who we're renting it to, there is some things we'd have to watch for legal purposes. Because again, a municipality should not compete against private businesses. That is just something you're not supposed to do. But as you're feeding the fund back in, if the money you're raising is going back in to preserve the history of the town, you're talking about a different animal. So the potential is there without running into those legal issues. I feel like there's a lot of wins with this. Again, the city is coming together on a very contentious issue. Friends of City Hall is recognized for all their work and is a partner in going forward. A piece of history is preserved, which has been a very vocal piece of these meetings. I mean, I think there's no argument what direction a lot of this has been going, especially with 300. But I will say financially, from a business perspective as well, a safety net is if you wanted to make a portion of 300 Broadway, designate, say, the teen zone area now, designate that area the Guy Community Center, because it is operable now. People could use it now. There has to be some funding to get things going, and we come back to the city's commitment and the funding of it. And I think that if 300 Broadway is where the heart of the city is, and it's what everybody talks about being the heart of the city, then it might make sense to look at being fiscally responsible, consider selling 303 water, and now you have a bank account to start going after these matching grants. Now you've got, let's say for round numbers, you got $250,000 you sell 303 for. Look at the matching grant money you can go after at state level, at county level, at private foundations. It gives you that slush fund you need to go after the rest of the money, and it's all dedicated to saving that piece of history in town.
I was amazed. I've been working on a marina in this town since the flood. We were constantly stonewalled, running into a wall because we could not find funding to do anything. Once we started working with the county, we got, I don't remember all of the alphabets, but we got not only the county commissioners involved, but county agencies that had their fingers in the money. And it was a question of positioning, rephrasing, looking at what the county wanted to spend money on and matching that revenue stream with what we wanted to do with the marina, and the money was there. The money was there. The money is there now, from what I understand, and we've got the buzzwords at our fingertips.
Right.
We're repurposing. It's a community collaborative effort. I think there's a lot of potential there, and I think we need to hear from Jeff. We need to bring in, again, I can't remember all the names, the EDA, who's the,
I'd like to bring in Shannon Schwabe, who's from the SBDC, so the Michigan Small Business Center, Development Center, who has a lot of connections to different grants. We could bring in Dan Casey, and then
That's who I
there's,
was thinking.
Mark Shunt, I think it is, and he's with the county, and he'll actually come in and do a planning session with the group. And they have grant writers available, but they have to believe in the project. And the projects always have to do with what's in line with what we need in the region, in the county, in the community. And that's why the Marina project was successful, because we were able to show the impact that it had, not only on the city, but it was regional, and it was countywide. So,
yeah.
and it was, I mean, it was a big project, but we did it, and it was awesome. Stacy's here. She is our director of the chamber. I'd like her to kind of, she's younger than I am, and she has younger kids, and I'd like her to, she did her own little research, and I'd like her to, I didn't read it.
Maybe I'm cool with that if I go now?
Yeah, sure.
Hey, Holly, real quick, I just have a fast question. There's a term, I'm getting the context what it means, but I'm not sure. What exactly does incubator space mean? I've never heard that term before.
It has to do with like young entrepreneurial, I shouldn't say young, but entrepreneurial folks who are startup businesses who may work remotely and say want to come in and have an office space for a week or so or a month, or have a meeting space available to them if they're remote workers. And as we all know, in this day and age, there's a lot of remote everything. You also have contract workers who are here, like Laura mentioned, Kiewit over at DTE, and they have hundreds of people living locally who are renting homes or whatever, but maybe they want a business instead of having to be at the DTE conference table with 25 other people. So,
It's also
I
collaborative.
understand that the
It's very
Eddies,
Yeah, it's the whole thing about it. It's a really hot thing right now.
Yeah.
Okay, I just never.
No, it's cool stuff.
No, I just never heard of
Yeah.
it before, so.
Yeah.
I understand that the Eddy Center is already sold out. I mean, there is no more room to get any more people in to use that
Yep.
facility.
Absolutely.
That's a part of our business plan.
And yes,
for
and it
Clinton
is.
City Hall.
Yep.
And we meant to establish one or more rooms in the basement as bigger rooms.
yep.
Yeah, so
For that for 2017.
I don't see that this is one group working at cross purposes with another group in the city. I see, having worked with groups like this, particularly on the Marina project, there's a great deal of synergy involved in here. And at the very least, this is new information, and I think we should pursue it just because we need to know what's possible. So, you want to?
Go Stacy.
Okay. I am Stacy Bellis. I'm the Executive Director of the Marine City Area Chamber of Commerce, and I'm also a resident here in Marine City. I moved here from St. Clair Shores in August of 2017, and a few of you know me from the coffee shop, Roasted, that closed last January. I worked there for 3 years. When I was 11, my parents bought a house that was built in 1921, and it had been let go. For lack of a better term, it was a dump. No one saw its potential, so it was on the market for a long time. My parents, however, saw a lot of potential in this house, and this was before flipping houses became as popular as it is now. It was in like 94, I think they bought the house. We spent a lot of time watching episodes of This Old House with Norm Abram, and sometimes we would watch Bob Vila, but we like Norm better. And they started getting ideas of how to bring this house back to life and breathe life back into the house. They said, don't worry, we'll remodel it and make it beautiful. As a family, we started gutting the house down to the studs, room by room, and right before my eyes, this old, ugly house turned into a beautiful, modern home that would be my home for many years. Fast forward to last week, when what Laura just said about the woman on Facebook asking for a remote workstation, I saw that comment, and I commented on it, and I suggested that she go somewhere. It hurt me to suggest that she had to go someplace other than Marine City. But in doing that, I started thinking about, how many people are in need right now for a remote, I don't want to use remote work, but like a space that they can get out of their house to work, because you don't always want to go and spend money, I guess. You want to just have an office that's not really an office. So I started doing some research on what the world of work would look like in the future, which would be called trend forecasting. While researching it, I came across a multitude of websites, articles, YouTube videos, and statistics that all say the future of work is hybrid. I know there's a lot of new words in here. So I'm going to speak on that. I am not a spring chicken, but I do have 2 spring chickens at home, and they are the next generation. I didn't know what a hybrid workplace model was until I did some more research. I spent a lot of time reading into this stuff this week. So I have a definition here. A hybrid workplace model mixes in-office and remote work to offer flexibility and support to employees. In a hybrid workplace, employees typically enjoy more autonomy, which means the right condition of self-government, and a better work-life balance, and they're more engaged as a result. Employers benefit by building a more productive, healthy, stable workforce with happier employees. 300 Broadway could be a perfect building for this, is a perfect building for this. Here's a little bit of what I learned about employees right now. 42% of current remote workers say that if their current company does not offer remote work options indefinitely, they will look for a job at a company that does. 57% expect to be in the office only 10 days or less a month. And 98% believe that future meetings like this would be all, include all remote participants. So, Zoom took off. It zoomed. So it became a whole thing. So, and it is, like you said, it's new. It's what's happening. Some large companies using a hybrid work model include Microsoft, Spotify, BP, Target, Ford, 30,000 employees to work from home indefinitely from Ford. British Airways, Citigroup, which most are required to be in the office only 3 days a week. Apple, American Express has given their employees the option of 2 days a week, and they call it colleague's choice. Adobe, Uber, Alphabet Inc., which is a Google company, they approved 85% of employees to work remotely. Cisco, Intel, and Trip.com, which is the largest tech company in the world to use a hybrid work policy. If we can create a space for these large companies to rent out for their employees that live closer to Marine City than the headquarters, why wouldn't we do it? Imagine if you had the choice of where you wanted to work for the day. You could either go to the office, or you could go home, or stay home, or you could go to this remote workspace or hybrid workplace. That brings us to the building. It has so much potential to host these employees. For the main floor, I'm envisioning a multi-organization hybrid workspace for the community to set up a personal remote workstation for the day. This space can be for single employees that want to get out of their house, because not everyone has a space in their home that is conducive to working. I recently had to create one, and I do not have a big house. It's also for larger companies to rent out space for small groups of employees that need to collaborate with one another. I see a mix of collaborative and private spaces, multi-purpose areas that employees can use depending on the work they're doing, furniture that is easy to reconfigure, desks with ergonomic chairs or yoga balls, power sources, and strong Wi-Fi, of course. Standing desks for those that prefer to stand while working, kind of like a podium. Pod chairs with a swinging lap desk. Hanging chairs for the content creators that would like to just hang out while they edit their content. Pod tents for the people that prefer to have a little more privacy, like maybe a new mother that needs to pump breast milk. The use of office equipment, a community kitchen space that offers coffee makers, espresso machines with how-to videos, blenders, commercial refrigeration, toasters, microwave, etc. I see coolers stocked with fresh lunch options daily from our wonderful restaurants. And possibly a rotating food truck on a predetermined day of the week so that no one has to leave the property to get lunch. I was thinking Mondays because it's a slow day. And then maybe at some point, maybe the teen zone could eventually down the road be a daycare if it's something that's needed. And sometime even further down the road, I see the second floor being a beautiful wedding venue, and I know that's been discussed. Imagine the natural sunlight that comes in and how beautiful the photos would be. Speaking of photos, Marine City is home to so many businesses necessary to plan a wedding. We have many great photographers, caterers, a florist, bakery, DJs, candy shop, gift shops, Airbnbs, the inn. And it doesn't have to be specifically for weddings. We could offer that space to groups or organizations to host vendor shows, pop-up art fairs, craft shows, etc. This building has so much potential, and we need to work together to keep it as the landmark that it is, but also breathe new life into it and turn it into a multi-purpose space for the community. The end.
Hey, Judy, go ahead. Thank you, sir.
I'm Judy White. I'm the president of Friends of City Hall. If you haven't attended earlier meetings, I have copies of some of our handouts from the past that I can distribute later in my carry bag. I'm hearing nice, creative ideas. They're well-intentioned, they're well-meant. But nobody's focusing on the real issue. And the real issue and the issue of the moment is preservation of the building and restoration of the building. The building is unusable as it stands for the most part, except for that garage addition. And it is not ADA accessible. And as a matter of fact, there's a huge hole in the roof very close to the hose drying tower, and the last heavy rains that we've had, it has come in, run down the walls, and puddled on the floor by the one barrier-free door. So I just distributed to you a proposal from Poe Restoration. They were out on the grounds looking the other day at the situation. They're coming back next week with a crane so they can get up and find out what's wrong up around the flashing area where the hose drying tower connects to the building. Because we want to plug that up, we want to finish it. Now, Holly, no, in all due respect, what you're talking about the city, raising money and the city going for grants and all of that, the city should have been doing that for decades and did not. And so here we stand with a building that supposedly back in 2008 had the exterior envelope fixed, and it wasn't fixed properly. And you'll see that indicated in this document that I just handed out. And that's because somebody wasn't on top of that 24/7. So all these ideas that are floating around here is kind of interesting, and all this research for money and struggle to get money, who's going to do that? Who is going to be, if the city's going to own the building, who is going to be your professional grant writer and the person who is in charge of restoration of that? You cannot leave it to bunches of different offices and individuals and different groups in the community. It'll never get done, or if it is, it will be done badly, I promise you. So if you have restored an old house, you know you have to devote your life to it. and you have to do it right, or you're wasting your money and your time. So Friends of City Hall is focused on that issue. We want to fix those problems first, and once it's legal to let the public come in, open a business. Try to make a little money and take it step by step. So I appreciate legal reservations regarding selling the building to us. I think they're surmountable. I don't think they're a permanent barrier.
I mean, I kind of think of the proposal is not taking you out of that role that you're in now as much as finally helping you. So grants are written under the guise of the city as opposed to Friends of City Hall. You now have more resources to help. So I definitely don't see, like, that's why I asked my question before. I don't want to remove you guys. You guys have been the godsend for that building for years.
I understand that, Brian, and I'm listening to you, and but when push comes to shove, what are you going to do? Are you going to turn your back on our architect and the drawings that he's done and the intentions there? Or, are you going to replace him with somebody new? Who's going to be in charge of that? Who's going to be the project manager?
I mean, I don't see why we would change any of that. I mean, I don't think that that's what the conversation's about. I think that the conversation is just about simply augmenting what you're doing, helping.
And when the city goes for grants, what are you going to say in the grant application about what the city wants to do with it and what the future intentions are? Because you're then going to have to talk about a third party. Because you don't want to move back into that building. The city has no ideas about, going back to that building. The city has no ideas for a business that it wants to install. Those are our ideas. Well, all right.
Laura?
So back in 2017, and my memory is not 100% clear, but prior to that, there was a group that presented to Blue Meets Green with the proposition of creating a theater project, kind of like what the Vertons are doing, but it was headed up by the Historic Society. It was headed up by Cheryl Zimmer. She presented before Blue Meets Green, and it didn't show enough regional impact, so it didn't get votes, all right? From there, in March of 2017, a group of us got together, and there's 20 people, and I have a list of the people that were on there that signed up. We started meeting to create the Enrichment Center. And a lot of the ideas that Friends of City Hall have, a lot of the ideas the Enrichment Center got were from Friends of City Hall. It was a collaborative group, okay? Unfortunately, and I hate to say this, and I don't mean this in any way, shape, or form, but we have to move on. We have to look to the future. Because bringing up the past and what happened and what wasn't done right, now is the time for the city to take responsibility, take their, I'm going to use your words, your prodigal son back, okay? And get it to something that the community can use with the vision. And the way that you do get funding is it has to be in line, just like the projects that we've done. It has to be in line with what is needed in our region. We think we know, but the EDA does studies all the time. That's what they do. That is their job. So, they know what is needed in our region. And if we can do something there, I'm just saying that we actually could take 2 sections of that building, and within 6, 7, 8 months, you've got 2,600 square feet that we could open. So, and then move to phases. So I'm with Friends. I mean, we can't do this. What I'm saying is we need all the groups to work together to do this. So having representatives from all these organizations on a subcommittee that's run by our, the Community and Economic Development Board, which we're lucky to have, that would be the guide, the guider for where we need to go. What's important? What's the next step? What's phase 1? What's phase 2? What's phase 3? And then who knows? In 5 years, not 10, maybe 5 years, maybe 3 years, we can get it to the place where the whole building's done. So, like I said, this is not, one person doing it. It's a group. It's a group effort, people working together for all of our common vision. We want to save this building. So.
I think one of the things that is making a difference is we've got two ideas, and one is to restore something, and the other is to put it to use. And I think that moving forward, the more we focus on the uses and how that use benefits not only our community, but the surrounding communities, St. Clair County, that's where we're going to get more interest and more public involvement and more public funding. I don't think federal funding is out of the question moving forward, but we have resources closer to home that we can tap. This, in my understanding, is not this group versus that group, our idea versus their idea. This is, we got a business plan. This is, we've got experience in raising funding. This is, we already have available space that we can start using immediately as a community center. This is an idea that fits in with the things that the city is able to do legally and otherwise. And I think it's worth exploring. I'm not ready to make a decision. I don't think anybody's ready to make a decision on what we should do, but it's certainly an idea that's worth exploring, and not to the exclusion of any parties that have already been involved in this. Judy?
I just wanted to speak in favor of the idea this gentleman had about hopefully
303
a
Water
group
Street?
that would, emerge as
Right.
members of 303.
Right.
I think that's a sterling idea, and I think it has a lot of potential.
Okay. As we move on to that, get your thinking cap on, because an idea you just can't float an idea. We need a business plan. How are you going to do it? Who's going to do it moving forward? So that would be something to get together with a group or whatever, and maybe come up with something next week that we can look at on paper.
2 weeks.
2 weeks, I'm sorry, I keep saying next week. So, something to think about, Phil. Yeah.
And I just want to pose to the community also, this is switching gears slightly, but really not. It really would be very, very helpful to understand what the community expects of a community center. I have been trying to query former commissioners, elderly people within the community, et cetera, on what the Guy Center did to serve the community and what was the model behind it? Could you rent a room? Was it just walk in, and as long as you have a driver's license that says you live in Marine City, you can go? I just want to understand what the expectation is of a community center, because I don't want anybody to be disappointed in the end, based on what ends up being created. I want to be very clear and very forthright in our understanding of what a community center does to serve the community, how it's available for the community, and what it might be able to give back to the city, in terms of if it's a rental space, if it's, something that's only allowed for residents, it's allowed for residents outside, residents, their families, these types of things. So any information you had on how the Guy Center operated and whether that or not that operated as an exemplary model for the community, I would be personally very appreciative of. So I've been talking with like David Simpson and some others who did have some insight as to the way that it did work in the past, and what you know, what it did to serve for the community. The other thing I'd say is, you know, I think this entire group at the table, you know, because one of the gripes from the community is that the city offices had resided in the Guy Center for 16 years. And I think everybody here admits that wasn't the right thing to do, and we want to make it right. So while, you know, it's okay to be mad about it, but just please understand that the people sitting in front of you at this table are about giving a community center to the community, and really want to understand what that wants to be, needs to be, was in the past, and can be in the future. So again, please, for anybody watching online too, please take that away. Email us, send us messages, and I think there was a way online to communicate with us as well. Or again, all the commissioners' many of our phone numbers are available, so.
Have you looked at Washington Life Center, what they do?
Well, and that's another thing that presently serves a very large chunk of what I'd consider a community center to be, so. Just saying, you know, that great point, and how would the Guy Community Center tie into what the Washington Life Center is already providing? You're the
So-
chair.
Joe?
Phil?
Joe, can I speak to one thing really quick? I want to piggyback off of a little bit something Judy said before we get too far away from it. You were talking about how would things run, you know, who's going to keep tabs on things. And I think, you know, playing devil's advocate and looking at all of this and weighing the pros and cons from the business side of it, which is where I'm sitting, and the city side of it, I think you have a great deal of check and balance in place if it remained a city-owned type of situation. You'd have an oversight committee. It would fall under somebody, you know, one of the committees to keep an eye on. Your DPW supervisor would be maintaining it with his employees as another piece of property we're supposed to be maintaining. The funding would be coming through the commission. It would be kicked up through whatever committee it began at, and it would go to the commission for voting on. It would be critical to normal city bidding processes. So you're going to get your best bidders. It's going to go out for bid. You're going to get reputable people bidding on it. It would be run like the city does. It would provide that check and balance to the community to know that it is getting done, and there's a lot of eyes on it now. It's, you know, I agree. There are some things done in the past, and we can't control what was done then, but you have a group of people here now on the commission, on the planning commission, on the subcommittees, and personally, I mean, sitting in the manager's office, I want to see this community move forward in a positive way. There's so many great things happening here, and there's so many drivers in this community to see things go forward. The time has changed, and the people are in the right places now to help push it forward, and everybody's watching. So it would be under a microscope. People would be paying attention. I don't think you'd see anything fall through the cracks on this. This would be a true goal to get to the end. You know, if this is what if this is what the commission ultimately decided to do, I think you'd have more check and balance with this option.
Phil?
All right, I just want to kind of, maybe there's a way to hybrid all this together and still work it off of two fronts. The Friends of City Hall have concerns with, you know, oversight, things like that. I understand that. So for now, let's take 303 Broadway and let's pretend we just put it in like a maintenance, keep the utilities on, everything like that for right now.
Wait, 300 Broadway or
303, excuse me, 303 Water Street. Too many addresses floating around, I guess. Let's take 303 Water Street and put it like on just a kind of a maintenance status. What if there was a way to work something with the Friends of City Hall where we sell it off, we sell 300 Broadway to the Friends of City Hall. Let them begin continuing their work. I like the idea about the incubator spaces and everything. So once they can get it established where you can bring businesses in, bring those businesses in, get those incubator spaces off the ground. Have some form of agreement where maybe somewhere down the line, some of the money that comes in through rent, majority of it goes to Friends of City Hall, but some of it might be able to be put aside. And then, Mr. Ross, you brought up about the city making things right with the Guy Center. So here's my proposal on that. It seems like the most expensive thing is going to be like getting that place ADA with an elevator, you know, along those lines is my understanding of it. what if the city were to put up half towards just that? Some of the money that eventually filters in from the incubator spaces over at 300 Broadway is made as a donation over to 303 Water Street, just until you guys can get that place ADA compliant, then open up 303 Water Street, still owned by the city, and see if there's a way to get incubator space, things like that, going over on 303 Water Street to start that funding itself. The Friends of City Hall still have the ownership over 300 Broadway, and they continue to go their path on restoration while getting use out of it at the same time. So kind of take a blend of everything and mix it together. No, but I'm saying work it as two fronts, but have the different organizations work together with Friends of City Hall owning 300 Broadway for the 10-year duration. Anyone else still confused or no?
Super.
What I'm trying to say is, put 303 Water Street on the back burner for right now in a maintenance status, all right? 300 Broadway, you sell it off to the Friends of City Hall, they begin their work in there, then they get the incubator spaces going, the rent, everything else coming in. A portion of that money initially, whatever it comes up to, going towards 303 Water Street to support, the ADA compliance. Once you can get 303 Water Street up to the ADA status where you can open it up for people to use it, then get incubator spaces and everything going over at 303 Water Street, so maybe that can start funding itself, and then anything that comes in for 300 Broadway strictly stays over at 300 Broadway. So use 300 Broadway in that work to kind of jumpstart the Guy Center a little bit. It's just throwing it out there. Because you got the use, you got the restoration, you have everything kind of packaged into one. And of course, still protect River Rec Teen Zone, which I think is great. You brought that in the community, by the way, and thank you for that. So just an idea to kind of maybe hybrid mesh it all together, if it's possible. That's all I wanted to say.
Not speaking against the idea in any way, shape, or form, I just don't want my words to be misconstrued. So when I mention Guy Center, I mention it merely as the community center, not by an address. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm not trying.
Plaque.
Right,
Yeah,
or a
no, I
plaque
know.
or what have you. So all I'm trying to say is I wasn't speaking specifically about 303 Water Street when I mentioned Guy Center. I was speaking about a community center for the people of Marine City to use, regardless of address, just a community center for the people of Marine City. So, again, I'm not talking about buildings, I'm talking about just the community center, wherever it may reside. Sorry.
Is it Dave or Dan?
It's Dave.
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 Yeah, my name is Dave Niedenthal. I'm an outsider. I've lived here for about 6 years now. And I'm watching stuff happen, and I love this little community, and I'd like to see it go forward. And the biggest issue I've noticed in watching things happen is everybody kind of is busy stepping on each other's anatomy instead of trying to get things done. Everybody has a little fiefdom that they're trying to protect. I know this isn't the proper meeting to say this, but as a tax-paying citizen, all I see is stuff going out of town. I don't see anybody coming in and filling that space. Who's going to continue to fund all these pipe dreams we have? I love the city, save the city hall stuff, but I mean, come on. That's not serious business moving forward. And these two people, I'm guessing, occupy the same building. And I can see just watching this little bit here, they're not on the same page. Somebody needs to be the big guy in the room. Set all the children down and say, here's what we're doing moving forward. It sounds like they've kind of got a little plan for this. Hopefully she can be involved in this, but everybody needs to get on that page and get it done and get it done right. I say this and I'm off to St. Clair to have fun because St. Clair's a city that seems to be getting things done because somebody up there is getting people on the same page. We need to do that. Thanks for your time.
Hopefully that's what this work group is about.
I hope so. I mean, but I just sit here and I listen and I'm hearing the same stuff that I hear at the couple meetings I've been at. It's like everybody just can't, everybody's like mad at this group or that group or like, come on now. We're all trying, this is Marine City. I'm Marine City now. Let's be Marine City and move this thing forward because in the 6 years that I've been here, all I see is Marine City doing this. I'd like to see Marine City starting to do this.
Thanks for your report.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Do we entertain any comments on 303 Water Street? Anybody here to have discussion about that? Phil's already given us some ideas. Yeah, Laura?
About a year and a half ago, I was approached by a gentleman who managed Wolfgang Puck Restaurant. And he had a partner who actually had another restaurant in Chicago. One of them was originally from Algonac, the other one, his mom lives in East China. They came to me just because the chamber was closed, because it was a weekend, and they knew that I was the president of the chamber. So talked about potential buildings that were available for a restaurant, took them around, made an appointment with the city manager at that time, and they fell in love with 303 Water Street. They asked to be put on a list that if it ever became available for sale, they would like to open up a small restaurant. Their restaurant idea was to do, everything was stone-fired, wood-fired. So not, chicken everything, but not just pizzas and things like that. So very progressive-minded people, amazing people. So when they assumed the building would be a $500,000 building, they understood that they do not get the point from the back to the river. They understood that, but they were good with that because it was for the view. And they wanted the building, not to knock down the building, not to add on to the building, but they wanted the building. I later talked to them not too long ago, and after a lot of things that they had read on Facebook, they were scared away. They were frightened away. Now, this was an amazing potential for a Chicago restaurateur and a Wolfgang Puck manager to come to Marine City to open a restaurant, and they got scared away. I think that there are potential people out there that want to open up a small restaurant, willing to spend $350, $450, I don't know what the building would go for, that have the means to make it into a restaurant, make it ADA compliant, whatever they need to do. So you know where I'm going with this. My idea is I think the city needs to, sell this building and understand that, that waterfront piece is protected because that's a park. So they can't do anything. That can't be ruined. But I do think, and after listening to the last two meetings, people would like something done with the Guy money. And I think if that could be turned into, used in 300 Broadway to bring a community center, which we can't really use that word, it's more like enrichment center, you've got to use something a little broader. But I think that would be amazing. So I'd be willing to call these people and see if they want to try, and look at the building again, but I'm sure there'll be others.
That was an Italian restaurant?
No, it wasn't, I wish.
I was going to say, call them tomorrow.
And for further clarity, the city has to, we are legally bound to do something with the Guy funding that was provided. So that's not even really a question.
Yeah.
It's, absolutely imperative.
I have a question about the Guy funding. The bequest was $42,000. The city put additional money into the purchase and has since maintained, for better or for worse,
Right.
that building.
Correct. How much will we have to put into the fund?
Well, I'm, and again, probably Robert's, the city attorney's the one that's gotta look at this. $42,000 moving forward was not enough money to maintain a community center in perpetuity. It bought the building. Moving forward, the maintenance, the continuance of that community center
Cleaning staff,
has to come from someplace else.
Right.
Yeah.
And even $250,000, is that going to do, who's gonna make that, you know, we've talked about who's gonna watch 300 Broadway. Who's going to look at this community center as an ongoing legacy
Right.
and continue to fund that? And that's a question we have to answer.
And that would fall into the I mean, we would end up having a section of the budget dedicated to the 300 Broadway, and the line items within it designated to, you know, community center maintenance, repairs, contractual services, whatever it took. And when the city made the commitment to the Guy family to accept that money, they accepted a long-term commitment to that family, whether or not the money was there or not, really, to have this designation of the Guy Community Center in some fashion. And so I do think some sort of revenue generating option is going to be the best bet. Otherwise, the city's simply going to be reaching back into their general fund to fund this as the years go on, whatever it may be and however much it would be.
And that's what happened the last time, was the city stopped reaching into its general fund to maintain that building.
Exactly. And this,
And
in
we
talking
can't
with
have
the
that happen
auditor
again.
and with the attorney on this concept of the 42,000 invested into the property and what would it ultimately have to come out and be. We want to sit down with Curtis McBride and our attorney again to look at it. But ultimately what they believe would happen is it would come down to the sales price of the property. We would take a percentage based on what was the original 42,000 that was put in, what the city pulled out of the general fund to finish off the sale of the property, estimation of what's been put in over the years, and work out a percentage of what makes sense that would go back to the city and what would go into the general fund. Now, when you start getting up into $250, $350, whatever, $1,000, you know, it's a little bit different of a game changer. But depending on what the commitment is from the city, I mean, they could potentially say, put the whole thing in. Just put the whole thing in, put it towards the property, start the fund. There you go. And now we need to figure out how do we do this long-term with some sort of revenue generating in there. But there is a formula that they're willing and able to figure out the amount they said. But it would have to be based on whatever the sale price was.
But
I wondered about funding on function as well, and when this question came up, you know, a few weeks back when we started this, I started doing some reading and some digging around and responding, you know, thinking of what Brian brought up. And historically, a community center has been funded by Parks and Rec and by grants. And the function changes over time, a lot. And basically, what a community center is what the community wants. You know, it reflects what the society is like at that moment, and what the, you know, the interests are and the kind of pursuits that they want to. So there's, you know,
and again,
I open.
reaching out to the community to understand expectations too. And also, you know, we can go to other community centers and various other surrounding communities and elsewhere to understand what they
I
do.
think you're gonna have a problem with that because Marine City was the only community center in the River District historically. So
Yeah.
there's no other community, you know, small communities like
Sure.
Marine City can give you guidance. Bigger ones, yeah, and it's a little different issue, I think.
Yeah. And just to go off of what Holly had mentioned previously, so everyone understands, with the sale of the building, there conceivably could be additional funds that would support a Guy Community Center. With the raising of the building or some other facet, right? The city owes $42,000. That I think is all that they would owe, right? That, maybe the lawyer has more to go through on that, I don't know, maybe Bob has more to look at on that.
It would be more than 42,000. But again, the number, there's wiggle room on the number if depending on what you do. If you're turning
Right.
around and putting the money back into a building that you're gonna designate as the community center anyway, the bottom line doesn't necessarily matter because all the money's gonna go back in to doing that.
Right.
Now, if you were in a different position where if you were selling the building to Friends of City Hall and you decided to sell 303 and now you have a lump of money that you now need to figure out, then you're gonna need to divide that up appropriately based on the equation. So the money can follow the building if that's the route you go. And it doesn't have to be quite as down to the penny.
Sure, but raising the building, I'm saying, like tearing it down.
Oh.
Making it a park,
Oh, yeah.
that I thought was, we owe
city's- the
42,000.
city's-
Then,
the hook
yeah,
for-
you better,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, or maybe more, I don't know,
Right.
but
And there was, to go that route to feed off this, there was a suggestion that I was given last week too by a couple of people, and was if you went that route and you could come up with the money for the demo of the building and you do level it and you do expand the park and you put up a pavilion. There is nothing in the language that says that the Guy Community Center has got to be 4 walls. Nothing. It could be a pavilion. You could name a park. You could do whatever you wanted with that. You could rent the pavilion space and put the money back into that property, and that could be your space. You know, there's different options, and the money follows how you want to do it. So, but that was something else that somebody had brought up specific to that one. Put it back into.
And that again would depend on Brian's idea of what does the community want?
Right.
You know, would they be satisfied with a pavilion?
Right. And then the only thing with that is, again, that would come down to general fund. If you did something like that where you're making a decision that isn't self-funding in some way, so if you're not purchasing or you're not keeping 300, selling 303, using that money to fund 300, you're going to be pulling out of your own coffers. So if you do some sort of a demo to 303, you will be pulling out of your general fund for everything.
every single bit of it.
Every
right.
single penny of it. And I did reach
Demolition,
out to
you do
MEDC about demo, and they basically told me, Holly, you could have a historic building with bricks falling off on the sidewalk, and you're lucky to find demo money. They said, you want to talk about, you know, restoration and maintenance to historic buildings? Now come to the table kind of thing. So we really would be pulling out of our own money for the demo.
Friends of City Hall does not have any expectations and is not banking on getting some sort of cash from CL3 or, you know, whatever. That's just not part of our equation at all. So.
Okay.
Brian, Shannon had a really good idea. If you would like, we could maybe put together some sort of Facebook poll on what people would like to see in a community center and see if that helps, you know, drive some ideas and see what people's expectations are in the community center, what they'd like to see there. If that helps, we
Like
can
chicken soup that couldn't wait.
do that. I don't know if they'll do it, but
Yeah, I think that's good. I mean,
what uses they'd like to see in them or whatever.
uses and in particular examples are always good. If you've been to another community center and you knew it to be this way and that was a viable thing, just viability is one of my concerns because, yeah, I'd love it if we could have a free space that everybody could use anytime they wanted. But
Right.
then it would be booked solid and
Yeah.
nobody would be able to use it ever, right?
Right.
Anyway, you know, there just needs to be a sense of reasonableness behind it.
Yeah. See with it.
The other thing that I've created just to start conversations going, and I can make a second one for 300, and I could put it up with a big draft, you know, and or maybe even leave all the numbers blank for the time being. But this decision matrix that I sent around to at least the work group members. So it's used in business all the time. You've got what are your options on the vertical columns. You have all the costs associated with it on the rows going across, from the initial to the annual, both costs and potential income. And then I've subdivided each, so I have keep, lease, sell, and raise, or tear down. This is just for 303. And then I've subsetted that on, you know, if we keep it, is it used for a community center, a gathering place, a warming center? List any number of ideas out you want. Lease, is it a restaurant, bar, what have you? Sell, same thing, kind of, and then raise, is it a community park, a splash pad, what? So, it would be good for people to, maybe they could even submit their own, I don't know if that would be helpful. But for me, it's, one page to look at a bunch of ways to do something. I think we could post it on the website, and I can make, again, another one for 300 as well, I think that everyone's a little bit more aligned on 300 we absolutely want to keep. I haven't heard a single person in the community say either let's get rid of it or let's tear it down or let's sell it. Very few anyway. So everybody, I think, wants to keep it and restore it in some way, shape, or form. There's two different visions, it seems like, at the moment, but I'm hoping, something can come together in some cohesive thing. And again, the biggest thing is just getting money behind it, because I think we should hear out Jeff Boehm and Dave Vanden Bosch and see what they maybe have to say. I am not leaning one way or the other. I'd love to see that building be restored. I'd love to see it be a vibrant community centerpiece, and however that happens, I'm okay with. So, again, I'm not on anybody's team. The team I'm on is of 300 Broadway. So, again, I'd be happy to make one of these for that, but
Okay,
whatever.
that's a great idea, by the way. That's very helpful. I think our job has not been made easier by you guys. This is not a cut and dried situation, and Dave spoke to the point. At some point, we gotta get off the pot. And I appreciate that so many of you have been here every week and have given us diverse ideas. I think Brian spoke for all of us when he said that we're here for Marine City, we're here for 300 Broadway. None of us here have our own agendas or an axe to grind or anything like that. The bottom line is we want to make it happen, get her done. So if, Lisa. Can't hear you, dear.
Yeah, do you want to step up? Because then it gets online too.
So my only comment is that this board is just to create all the avenues of what can be done,
Correct.
not to make a choice.
Correct.
So that everybody understands that. All it is to try to put together all the information. If we sell it, this happens. If we
Right.
don't sell it, this happens. If we, so because it kind of was sounding like you were going to make a decision and a recommendation. So I just want people to understand that's not what your purpose is. Your purpose is to just take all the information in, create all the different scenarios, and then present that to the regular commission to figure out what they're going to do, right?
Well, your answer to me last week was you did want us to make a recommendation.
No, that's not what I said. What I said is you have to answer all the questions. So there's a lot of questions in each scenario you have to do. I don't expect, this board wasn't, when we created it, it was not to make a decision. It was to just fact find, gather, see what everybody wanted. Like I have I got your thing, which I loved, Brian. So I took it and I started writing all the questions I could think of
Okay.
that I want to see answered before I make a decision. And that's what I'm hoping is going to come from the board.
Okay.
This-
When are you going to give us those questions?
Well, that's why I'm writing them down, so I'm gonna, I said I'd turn them all in. I've been,
Okay.
I'm writing diligently
Yeah.
here, trying to get them down. And then I'll turn those in, and then it'll help you in the community too, to see what you're doing. So that they don't think you're doing one, now you've picked a new project and you're gonna go that way.
Well,
No,
we-
you're just
We
here
need to gather the information is
for
what
each
we're
different
trying to
idea.
do. Right,
Whether you,
right.
just like
And-
Brian's got here, whether you sell, lease, tear down,
And by the way, Lisa, I always have in the back of my mind, what's Lisa gonna ask?
Oh, yeah, and I'm,
About,
I can come up with a
what's
lot.
Lisa gonna ask?
My question for you, is there any value in sharing those questions with us?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I'll give them to them, and if they want to post them, I'm just trying to write generic things that I think need to be answered for everything. You know, whether, regardless of which way we go, if we sell, I just want to know what happens, like, say you decided to sell, what property goes with each one? You still got to make that decision whether we sell or we don't sell. Cost to survey if we do have to sell. You're gonna have to have them surveyed because those properties aren't separated. So that's another additional cost. So I got all sorts of stuff here for you.
Okay, good,
So,
good.
Anyway, that's all I wanted to bring up.
Thank you very much.
Joe, I slightly disagree with it a little bit, is no, you're not meant to make a decision here, but you should be narrowing the options and making recommendations of your most viable options up there. Because otherwise, this was a giant waste of time, and we're gonna do 13 meetings just like this at the commission level. The point of the work group is to dig into the guts of it, find your most viable options, and make those recommendations up to the commission with all of the data to go. Otherwise, really, you've just spun your wheels with 3 meetings now, and again, they're gonna hear the same thing at the commission level. That's why it's also, the board was brought in as a broad board. They're not, you're from different committees within the community. That's why we've been asking the community to come to all of these meetings, hear it now. We've been asking the commission members, come to these meetings, hear it now. This is the dirty work. This is the in the weeds stuff. It's supposed to get a little bit cleaner when you get to the commission level. That's why you do these. So I slightly disagree with that comment a little bit.
I'll still submit all my questions, and I hope we could answer them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
please do.
sooner the better.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
And filter it around, have other people fill it out, have other people ask questions, you know.
If you put your one together on 300 Broadway, I'd like to see that one too.
Okay, yeah, that one
'Cause
That's gonna-
some of
that's
these
gonna-
go
is
on each-
looking more difficult, because I mean, I only see kind of,
well,
not too many, I mean, I guess we
actually
could,
do the same thing.
yeah.
Except for the tear down part.
Yeah,
We don't wanna
Lisa,
tear it down.
send those our way to the office as soon as you have them, because if it's grunt work that we can put together to bring to this committee, we'll get those answers before we get here for you.
Yeah, and a lot of this has to do with each phase, because I know I did talk to Bob after one of our meetings, and he was concerned we weren't quite on the right track of getting the right answers. But I remember when we all discussed this at a commission meeting, that we decided that this committee was to just gather it all, give us all the different scenarios, and then we're gonna have to figure out what we wanna do with them. But this is a good start. So, like I said, these can be split, I'll try to split them up between 300 Broadway and 303 Water Street.
Okay.
Given that spreadsheet, Lisa, what more do you want to see on it?
Well,
All that
I'll
stuff.
send it to you.
Okay. But in terms of what he displayed and how he broke it down, do you?
I mean, half the costs I have question marks on, because I don't know them necessarily, right? So it sounded like you had a few added potential costs. You know, and those are the things I want to know, right?
Yeah, and I think, I'm gonna be honest with you about the ADA upgrading. When we got that originally a long time ago, we looked into that, and that figure was way out of line for what really was necessary. Cause like, you didn't have to put in all the things that they claimed we did to make it ADA compliant. There was some stuff necessary, and we found better ways to economically do it, but since nobody moved out right away, it just kind of fell by the wayside.
Okay.
So there are other alternatives to do it a lot cheaper than,
Right, but I mean, do we have that, you know, scrutinizing a quote is, I don't think.
well, they weren't quotes, that was just
Those were just
the
thrown
city
together
manager and
estimates, okay.
DPW coming up and saying, well, this is what we think it's gonna cost. It never went out for quotes or anything, ever. It was just, this is what we think.
The DPW manager did not go out for an RFP on these specific numbers, but he met with contractors for pricing at the time. So there are some legitimate numbers, but
But the
they weren't, it
elevator
wasn't an
isn't
official RFP.
necessary, and some of the other stuff isn't necessary based on the building code for, that's all I'm saying. So some of those things have to be reevaluated. And now that we have issues with inflation and everything else, it's,
Oh, yeah, building
that's
Supply
gonna be
chain.
another problem anyway altogether.
Sure, it could be double.
Well, it could be.
Or impossible.
Guys, anything?
Anyway, sorry, yeah.
I just think some soul searching is in order to figure out how much community space we need and why we need the Washington Life Center, Broadway, and Water Street. You know, I think that that's really the question, especially if we're going to end up spending money on them out of the gate and then ongoing maintenance, or, you know, what could potentially be kind of redundant.
I have to agree with that. I mean, if do we need, obviously the Washington Life Center already exists, it's not going anywhere, we don't want to compete with them. So, do we need one Guy Community Center? Do we need two separate buildings providing that same purpose, plus the Washington Life Center? I mean, I think it also goes back to Brian's comments. We need to figure out what the community wants out of a community center, and then you can figure out how much space you need to match it.
Isn't that the purpose of this work group, though? Like the exact purpose of the work group?
You know, I thought
Part
of
of
that
it.
question myself.
It's a property disposition work group, so, yeah, I mean, it's to understand what these properties need to be, so, yeah, I think that's a facet of it, yes, but it's not the strict purpose.
Yeah,
And it's not for us to cram down somebody's throats what their community center should be.
Should be, right.
So I don't want to do that at all. I want to make sure that we're inclusive and get all the ideas, as well as examples of what a community center can, should, and will be. The only thing I'd say about Washington Life is it's typically there's kind of a lower age limit and above. And, in fact, that's a heart-to-heart I had with David Simpson was they talked about doing some River X stuff in there, and that board
It went-
completely
yep.
voted it down because,
They didn't want kids in the building.
right. So
basically.
I think there is age above and age below, and I would imagine that the Guy Community Center could be for all ages, I would hope. But Washington Life is clear that is trended towards
Right.
some age and above.
And
Adults and above.
I think she raised a good point. Our purpose is not to determine what the community center should or could be. Our purpose is to determine what we're doing with these two buildings. And I think if we get stuck in the weeds of developing a community center, we're missing our point. Not to say we
But
don't
need to
need some
know
of
it.
those answers.
Yes, but we need to know it in order to know what to do with it.
Right.
Right.
Right, so we're
Options.
not recommending, what we want as a community center. We're deciding what to do with two buildings.
Right.
And part of that is the thought in the back of our mind, can this be used as a community center if we get rid of 303 Water Street? How do we replace that functionality?
Can we? Right.
But not what that functionality should be necessarily.
Correct.
Okay. John, you got anything?
Well, I just think the best thing, when it comes to running a business, that's not the city's job. And so, with these buildings that we're not using, we could all come up with great ideas about what we could do with 303 water, and, the sky's the limit. We could come up with all kinds of great things and when we keep it. But honestly, it's just another cost to the city at that point. And, the cities, one of the things I had a question of is if it's sold, what are the obligations for the new owner as far as ADA compliance? Let's say they were only going to use the upper floor as their business area or whatever, and maybe say the lower level was for something entirely different, like that basement access or whatever. They don't need an elevator, is that, So as far as having it be for a private, use, it seems like it's a better option for the city, because we're not going to get into the weeds of what are we doing with all these spaces. My only other example that I know of is I used to work at McMorran in Port Huron in the theater and the arena there, and it's just a black hole of money that the city has to pay for. They, McMorran gave it to the city and to keep in perpetuity, and great, we got this great big arena, we got this beautiful theater, all the great things, and now there's like there's a McMorran authority that makes decisions about what to do. And if those decisions make money, great. If they lose money, the citizens pay for it, which they lose money all the time. So I don't, just the fact that we're having however many meetings we're having about what to do with a couple of buildings. I mean, if these were a couple of buildings that I was paying $43,000 a year to, I'd make a quicker decision to deal with the money that's just going out for these buildings. So, my thought on 303, I realize, we could have a lot of good ideas about what we could try to do with these things, but I think in the interest of the taxpayers and, is to try to limit the amount of money that we're spending on things. And if we sell this and it becomes a great business, that, now we're getting money from that. And maybe if we get some of that money and maybe that pays for cleaning up the the Guy Center, whatever it is.
Yeah.
At some point.
Tearing down the Guy Center would cost, what? $102,000 to destroy a $400,000 asset.
Right.
And that's,
No,
wow.
you don't do that. I mean, we could do that, but that's not a good
Right.
idea.
Doesn't make sense. Brian, anything else?
No, I think I've said
John?
enough.
Holly? Anything else? Anything else?
We have another meeting set.
Okay,
What's our meeting schedule, Joe?
our next meeting
It's
is.
Monday,
Whoa.
9th,
It's on the
March
calendar.
7th.
7th. so-
March 7th, okay.
March 7, it's on a Monday.
It's on a Monday.
Yeah, we did it on a Monday to switch up days for the community.
I
in
am out of
case-
town that day, just so you guys know.
Okay, you want to call me?
No.
Do we want to set the one up for
Oh,
that?
yeah. Yep.
Do you want to set another one after that?
Mr. Chairman,
Since we know we're not going to have all of our,
20,
At
week of the 21st would be the, two
Yeah, we've been
weeks.
doing it every 2 weeks.
is that too little? Is that too much?
At some point, we've got to sweep off the table and start
Doing something.
Getting some
the
work
five
done.
of us figuring out what we want to do here. So I think we need next week to hear what the county reps have to say. And have Laura maybe flesh out more of her stuff.
And it's Monday? And they know it's Monday? The 7th?
It's the 7th.
The following meeting
Yeah.
in 2 weeks will be on a Monday rather than a Thursday.
But after that, I think maybe we need to decide how we're gonna get together as a group without the public, once we get that input.
For answering questions, for going over, making sure we have all the ducks in a row and things like that, right?
Yeah,
That-
Holly's asking, do we wanna
You can't meet
schedule another
without the
meeting
public.
after the
We
next
can't meet
one?
without the
You
public.
can't meet without the
Oh,
public,
right,
Joe.
yeah.
Open meetings
Well,
act, you
what
have to meet with the public.
yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to exclude you, but limit the public comment.
Oh, I
so
got
that-
you.
So that we can do a little bit more.
Working session and actually
Working
get some stuff on
sessions.
paper
Yeah,
instead of
sure.
speaking
Yeah.
so philosophically.
My original intent was to limit to 5 minutes this meeting and go into our work group session the following, but obviously we have some new information to process. Do you want to wait and see what happens next week, or what do you want to do?
I don't know, why don't we get it on the books, just so it's there?
Okay.
Then we
Yeah.
can decide what to
All
do
right.
with it.
Monday's not good for you, Ben?
I will be out of town.
Oh, I mean,
On the
Mondays
7th.
in general?
No, Mondays can work.
Okay,
That's-
Monday good for you guys too?
I can make it work.
Yeah, it works for me.
Yeah.
Just
Okay,
the 7th
so
specifically.
let's-
So you're saying
21st.
Monday, the 21st will be the next meeting after the one on the 7th?
Okay.
Is that what you're picking?
Monday, the 21st.
That's 2 weeks.
So we'll meet on the 7th, and then you'll meet on the
And the
21st.
21st.
Okay.
Right, okay. Where's my,
Whatever you want.
Still at 5:30?
We'll advertise it.
still at 5:30. Okay, folks, thanks again for your participation and input, and I'll
Motion to adjourn.
close the work group for the evening.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to
I
adjourn?
keep,
Support.
All in favor?
Brian?
Sorry.
No, it's here.
I only support Joe's motion.
Aye.
Aye,
Aye. Nay.
we're adjourned.
Thank you.